Prefer to not go first today.
You got it. Welcome, everyone. You are here at another High Vibe Conversation. I'm your host, Shel Shapiro. With me today, we've got Stina Marie, Linda Vetrus Nichols, Dorit Carlson, and Jenny Langren. Today, we will be talking all about forgiveness culture. Before we get into that, I'd like to do the usual housekeeping and welcoming everybody here. So I want to remind you that this is a safe space. We invite you to share with us as we talk through our life lessons and hold space for you to work through yours. So what this means is that if at any point in the conversation you are really like resonating with what we're saying, you have had an experience of your own that you want to share, you want to add your own insights, please feel free to add those into the comments to join the high vibe conversation yourself. And we would love to hear your thoughts and what you have to say. If you feel like you want to have this conversation more privately, you can always connect with us on LinkedIn. Or if you'd like to have a one-to-one high vibe conversation of your own, here's where you can use the link on the screen to schedule with the high vibe lady of your choosing. Also, whether you are catching us for the first time or wanting to check out some of the previous shows, here's where you can do that. You can check us out on YouTube. Please make sure to subscribe so that you can catch up on all the previous conversations and get notified when new ones are coming your way. That being said, let's get into today's topic, which is forgiveness culture. And I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me about forgiveness culture is that, like, as when I was growing up, if whether no matter what the issue was, I was always the one who had to like be the bigger person. I had to get over it faster. I had to forgive them because they're family, or like see beyond the hurt or the pain or whatever it was that I was feeling and be like, "Oh, well, they didn't mean it. So just get over it." Or like, "What do you mean it's still bothering you? Just move on." Like, and so it was always forced on me to like just get over it already. And I heard that a lot in my professional career as well, from former bosses telling me like not to hold on to things or to let go of grudges, which only made me hold on to those even more. And it built up a lot of resentment for me of like, well, why can't I process things in my own time or do things in my own way? So I'm curious to hear what's coming up for everybody else. Um, I don't usually come to Stina first. Stina, what's coming up for you? And are you okay sharing first on forgiveness culture?
Just felt like I was back on the pageant stage. You know, like you're getting called first to answer your question. Let's see, what do I have to say about? I'm learning a lot about forgiveness still. I feel like it's an ongoing journey, and it's something that I feel very few people have great answers for. Um, but I do find myself going back to Women Who Run with the Wolves a lot because I think that's probably my favorite explanation of forgiveness that I've ever read, because she breaks forgiveness down into a process and into stages so that it's clear that forgiveness is not like a light switch that you just like flip on and you've forgiven. Um, and there's emphasis of, forgiving isn't forgetting. Forgiving isn't just erasing what happened and, pretending everything is fine. And that there's no real like obligation or rush to forgive, and that it's okay to take your time through the process of unpacking what happened, feeling how you feel about it. Um, I just was in a little parenting class with Dr. Jen, who we've had as a guest, and something that she said. Oh no, now I just lost it. Something that she said about, it wasn't about forgiveness. I'm gonna have to come back to it if I think of it. Um, but giving yourself, oh, that's what it was, giving yourself time to feel your own feelings. It's like she just said, self-abandonment happens when we instantly focus on other people, and we can take a moment and check in and say, how do I feel about this? And that's a really important skill for our kids. It's something that I've had to learn as an adult. Like, oh, I get to have feelings first, and that's how she put it, was, how do I feel about this first? Like, me first. How do I feel? And when we understand how we feel, then we can go into a conversation or, ask questions to gather more understanding without skipping over that. And making the other person or people's feelings more important and more considered and more influential. So yeah, I think those are like the key things for me, is just like slowing the process down, knowing that it is a process, because times when I've done that flip the switch forgiveness have not worked out so well for me. I end up bitter, resentful later on, going, oh, I had lots of feelings about that I never shared, that I never got to process. I just thought, for me, it was, I'm going to be a good Christian girl, or I'm going to be a good Christian wife, and, not hold this against my husband or a friend, or, whoever it was. I'm going to be forgiving. And that really meant I'm going to put myself last. I'm going to not feel the feelings, and I'm going to pretend like it never happened.
I love what you said there about like putting yourself first, because I think part of the forgiveness culture is to sweep things under the rug and to forgive other people first, and we forget about ourselves, as you said. And I think that's why, myself included in this, a lot of people probably have a hard time like forgiving themselves too, if they've held on to things for so long and they didn't realize that they were bottling all that up. And you may often hear like, treat yourself the way that you would treat or talk to somebody else. Like if you're telling them to be kinder to themselves, if you're telling them to forgive themselves, or to like work through something. And then, like you said, if we can flip that script and like, well, what about me? Like, and put yourself first in that, we can reframe how we forgive ourselves first, and like then can move on to forgiving somebody else, or maybe not, and work through and see what's there. But I think the culture has programmed a lot of us to do it the opposite way for far too long, to like keep going through. And even when you're in an argument in a relationship, is like the person might have said like they're sorry and apologized, and they just expect you to like, okay, well, now everything's back to normal. I can go back to doing what I was doing, and you're going to be okay with it just because you've accepted my apology. And that's, I think we need to look at that and examine that deeper. So I love what you said, and I love the teachings coming from Dr. Jen as well. So thank you, Stina. I'm coming over to you, Linda. What's coming up for you as we're talking about forgiveness culture?
Yeah, it's very much a part of the boundaries too, knowing who you are, knowing, like Stina said, even taking that time to process how you felt about it, where you're at. And when you know yourself, then you totally are seeing, when you're noticing your reactions or whatever, more in touch with yourself, then your boundaries just show up, because it's like, if you're choosing not to have something happen again, then that's a boundary. And so being fully present and really noticing what's going on for you. So it's not about, oh, I have to forgive. That's definitely forgiveness culture. Rape culture too, right? It's like is part of rape culture. So yeah, that's kind of what came up for me, is the boundaries piece of it, kind of beyond what Stina was talking about. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it does. We could talk about boundaries all day long, and how that ties into the forgiveness culture. But that's maybe a conversation for another day. So I love what you've shared, Linda. Thank you so much. Dort, I'm coming over to you. What's coming up as we're talking about forgiveness culture?
A lot. the first thing I thought of when Stina was talking was how I see forgiveness kind of like how we deal with grief. Like everyone has their own journey. Some do it quickly in a way, and some can carry it for years and years. So we process it differently, but it has to be worked through. That was the first thing. The other thing that came up was a little story when I was trying to teach my kids, especially the two girls, about forgiveness and breaking trust and things like that. I tried to explain to them about Legos. Do you guys build Legos? Or have you, yeah, you know, the Lego little pieces that put together and make big things and stuff. Yeah. Well, my kids love the Legos. So that's what I compared it to. You can compare it to a house of cards or whatever. But when you build something like that, you add pieces on top of each other, and that's building the trust, right? And when someone breaks that trust and you're supposed to forgive them for breaking your building, whatever you've made, you're kind of taking those little pieces away from that person, you know? And to forgive them again, you have to kind of give them one piece back. Does that make sense? That they have to earn their trust to be forgiven. Yeah, well, anyway, it makes sense in Norwegian. For me, I had a big breakthrough, let's call it that, just a few years ago. I think it might have been like 5-6 years ago, when I started doing the Ho'oponopono practice, because I didn't know that I not had to, but that forgiving myself was a thing. I didn't know that. But like you, Shell, has said several times, you and I are the same in being quite hard on ourselves, right? And I was always blaming myself for everything that went wrong. I could have done better. I should have done this. All that kind of stuff, you know. So everything that wasn't like 100% perfect, that was my fault. And going through that process, and just I went for a walk with my dogs, and I just repeated it. You know, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Over and over and over again. And it was kind of like a dam that just burst. And in the middle of the forest, I just started crying and you know, just like poof. It was such a release. And afterwards I felt like I had like lost 20 pounds. It was whew, you know. So for me, that being able to forgive myself was amazing. So yeah, that was my little, yeah. I don't know what to call this.
Well, you called it a breakthrough, and I think that's exactly what it was. Two things were coming up for me as you were sharing. One, you were talking about Legos, and I was thinking about Jenga. I was thinking about like when we play the Jenga game with like the tiles that get stacked on each other, and like I was thinking about how that's like the built up trust, and then the object of the game is literally to take it away and to see who can like knock it over. And I'm like, part of the game should be then to teach people to rebuild it, like you said, with like earning back those pieces. But that's not part of the rules of Jenga, is to like build it back up. It's just to take away, and you kind of do build it back up, but you build it in a way to make it more fragile in Jenga. Like you keep putting the piece so that you hope that the other person knocks it over. And I'm like, I feel like forgiveness culture is like that in a lot of ways. Like we don't often take the time to rebuild in a way that makes it sturdier for the duration for ourselves. The other thing that I was thinking of, oh yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, for instance, if you take like a person that's lying to you, so in Jenga, that would mean that a person is lying to you many times. He's kind of removing those little pieces every time he lies. He's removing a piece, right? And then everything tumbles. But with the Legos and with the house of cards, it just needs a little bump, and then everything falls and shatters, and then you have to start all over again and build it all up. So that was why I went with the Legos instead of the Jenga. But we love Jenga here in our house. So
either way, I was making the associations with different things in the game, and so I love that you brought in those analogies. The other thing that I was thinking of, as you were talking about, like the 20-pound release, like you felt like it was just like a physical weight off of your shoulders. It reminded me of the soul exercise, the release that we do, Linda, that we did to let go of things that I felt like were people that were holding me back or that had wronged me, including myself, and how I needed to forgive myself and tell myself I loved myself. But where I'm going with this, because this is your exercise, not mine, so I don't want to share the full thing, but I remember telling you distinctly that the next morning I felt like a knife had literally physically been removed from my back. That's the same type of release in a different way, I think, than the actual 20 pounds coming off of you. But I had that physical release of, all right, this is a weight off my shoulders. I can forgive myself and move on. It wasn't just about other people. It was mostly about myself. So I that was what was coming up for me as you were saying that you had this breakthrough, because I felt something similar. And so I think it's really nice and pretty cool when we can relate to each other in similar ways, even if we've had different experiences with it.
Right. And I know you used that you had to, but the part of is just what's coming up. And if you're coming up, then you release you. But part of that exercise isn't the person has to release themselves. Sometimes it comes up that it's them that would, benefit from the release. So the exercise isn't about you have to forgive yourself. That it's just what comes up for
that was my experience with it. Was that I was holding on to a lot of things for myself and needed to let that go.
Right. It came up for you that to release you. It absolutely did. Yeah. It's not a have to. Thanks.
So Jenny, I'm coming over to you now. What's coming up for you as we talk about forgiveness culture?
Thank you, Shel. It seems that we're also talking about healing, healing through forgiving or healing through opening up the lessons that we learn through hardship. And even when other people wrong us or we wrong ourselves, that teaches us something. Our reaction or our triggers teach us. And about our values and who we are and what we want, and guides us towards that next step. And we can't learn those lessons until we recognize what happened to us or what went wrong. And that brings me to anger. And I'm from a culture that did not encourage anger. I often heard that it was very sinful and very much connected to losing control or just not doing right by you or other people. It was just dirty or not good. And once I started to connect with my healthy anger, I recognized what I now teach my clients, that anger is a direct connection with my worth and my value as a human being. That healthy anger of, how dare you? I deserve better, or you know, those are my boundaries that you just crossed. Or anger teaches me that I want to reclaim my power in my life, that I have boundaries. Anger shows me where those boundaries are. So I'm just seeing more and more how healthy anger is a part of my healing process, which then leads me to holding myself accountable and other people accountable and sort of forgiving. It's more like not holding on, but actually giving back, you know, allowing people to keep what was theirs so that it does not burden me anymore. Um, yeah, that's what came in, Shell.
I love talking about healthy anger. And I love that you've brought that into this in a way that kind of like reshapes the way that we all think about forgiveness culture. And I said it from the beginning, right? Like we're conditioned to not sweep things under the rug, or a lot of us are, you know, taught to like forgive and forget and move on very quickly. And this reframe that we've kind of done today, all of us have shared a little bit of it to reframe that narrative of what forgiveness culture can look like and what we're starting to do with that for ourselves and how we've navigated that. So I love having this conversation with you ladies. So thank you for all of your shares. We've covered a lot of things today, from taking time to process for yourselves, to navigating the healthy emotions, whether that's anger or another feeling that's coming up for you. We've talked about boundaries, and if something's come up that, you know, boundaries just show us what we won't let happen anymore. So I love that we brought that kind of conversation into the topic. I love that we brought in talking about toys and how we can be more playful with it to reframe the conversation, to rebuild trust and be able to move on, and to move forward from things. So I'm loving all the breakthroughs we've been having. I want to thank everybody for joining today's High Vibe conversation. Again, if you feel like at any point you want to share with us, please feel free to drop your comments, your insights, your experiences into the chat. If you want to do that more privately, you can always connect with us on LinkedIn, or schedule a High Vibe conversation of your own using the link on your screen. Again, if you want to catch up on previous conversations or make sure to not miss any upcoming ones, please make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. We look forward to having more High Vibe conversations with you in the future. And until then, we will say bye for now.